Chapter 801 Distinguished guests, you are listening at NovelFull.audio. 5 of them sat inside the sleek PTV, watching as the streets of the city flew by. Sunny was not the only one who had donned an extravagant suit. Kai was wearing an even more stylish attire, radiating so much grace and elegance that the interior of the moving vehicle seemed almost electrified. Cassie had chosen a simple, but flattering gown of soft colors. Her bracelets and jewelry were picked to match the silver half-dot mask that she wore like a crown. The familiar blue-green cloak was draped around her shoulders. She was holding the quiet dancer by the scabbard, as if it was a cane. Effie wore a white tunic with tasteful gold accents. There was a golden laurel resting on her head, with similar bracelets and anklets accentuating its sheen. With her olive skin and toned physique, she looked like an ancient goddess. The huntress seemed to be enjoying herself as she sipped champagne from a tall glass. Nephice chose to wear a more practical attire, which was nevertheless equally splendid. Her nightly suit consisted of black trousers, a black doublet with silver embroidery, and a pristine white cape. The simple band of the crown of dawn accentuated the steely gray of her striking eyes. Her hands, clad in white gloves, rested calmly on her knees. All of Sunny's worries about how pompous he looked in his expensive suit disappeared. Compared to the others, he looked almost underdressed. Was there really any time to worry about appearances, anyway? Looking at the members of the cohort, he hesitated for a moment, and then asked. "Are you ready?" Nephice glanced at him, then turned back to the window. "That it's just a ball." He stared at her for a moment, then grinned. Then, he laughed. "Oh, indeed. Indeed." Soon, the PTV left public streets and entered the road that led to the stronghold of the Valor clan. Although their main seat of power was situated in the Dream Realm, safely protected by the great walls of the legendary Bastion, the family obviously maintained several prominent properties in the waking world. This one resembled a hybrid between an embassy and a sprawling fortress. The complex took enough area in the center of the city to be considered a separate district and encompassed a multitude of buildings, most of them just a few stories high. More floors, of course, were situated underground, where the bulk of activity took place. The purpose of the buildings ranged from serving as residences for the members of the clan and retainers to training centers for the household troops, research facilities dedicated to various applications of spell tech, and everything in between. Just like Nephice had said, a legacy clan was not just a handful of people united by a bloodline. It was a large organization that, in the case of Clan Valor, included thousands upon thousands of people from all walks of life. The fortress also housed vaults where the sleeping pods of those awakened who either belonged to or served the great clan were located, so security measures were nothing short of exaggerated. Sunny himself could see and feel plenty of sentries, both mundane and possessing greater powers. Judging by a slight frown that appeared on Kai's face, there were plenty more that he had failed to notice. The complex was fully prepared to face any kind of attack, be it a manifestation of a nightmare gate or a sudden assault perpetrated by the forces of rival clans. On one hand, that made Sunny feel safe. On the other hand, escaping this stronghold would not be easy. Let's hope I won't need to. Other than that, the aesthetics of the complex were very pleasing to the eye. There were plenty of trees and grass around, with architecture that did a great job of hiding the utilitarian and militaristic design of the sprawling fortress. In fact, if Sunny did not know any better, he would have thought that he was in the middle of a blissful garden district that was meant for people to relax in peace and tranquility. Living here must have been very nice. Chances were, he would have an opportunity to experience that life rather soon. Yeah, as if that would happen. Sunny glanced at Nephice and then turned away, his face darkening. A few minutes later, their PTV approached the center of the complex, where a grand structure stood, illuminated by bright spotlights. He felt a bit of awe when he noticed that it was built of stone blocks similar to those that Bastion itself consisted of. This hinted at the fact that the stones were brought to the waking world from the Dream Realm. Considering that only powerful masters and saints could transport matter between two worlds, the cost of the Great Hall was nothing short of astronomical. He could hardly imagine a more impressive and effective proclamation of wealth and power. The great clans really knew how to set the stage. The walls of the hall were decorated by vermilion banners that stretched from its roof to the very ground, each bearing the image of an anvil pierced by a sword. A red carpet led from the grand stairs to the road where a row of similarly luxurious PTVs were parked, slowly moving as their distinguished passengers disembarked. Neat rows of uniformed honor guards stood at the sides of the red carpet, forming a living corridor through which the guests had to walk before they reached the entrance. Everything about them screamed of discipline and power. These soldiers alone were enough to protect people invited to the ball from most dangers. Not that the guests needed any protection. Although there were a few high-ranking mundane humans among them, most were either promising awakened or masters. There were even saints here, which made Sunny feel rather uncomfortable. If there was one group of people in the city he really wouldn't want to provoke, it were those attending the ball. Sunny felt like a little fish being thrown in a tank full of hungry sharks. He could probably fight off or at least escape from any one of these sharks. But all of them together. Still. I'm not without sharp teeth myself. Finally, their PTV reached the vermilion carpet. Sunny waited for the door to open, then sighed and stepped outside. Chapter 802 Feast of Deceit. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Nephise walked forward with her usual impassive confidence. It was as though the magnificence of the towering hall, the rows of armor-clad honor guards, and the distinguished guests surrounding them did not deserve her attention, let alone apprehension. Her face was still and inscrutable, and her eyes were cold and focused. As the rest of the cohort followed behind her, Sunny couldn't help but feel uneasy. Right now, he was especially frustrated at his lacking ability to read her moods. He just hoped that Changing Star was not going to try and assassinate the members of the Valor clan as soon as she saw them. No way, she wouldn't. Right. Their arrival caused a bit of a stir. Many eyes were suddenly directed at the four members of the cohort, but it was nothing compared to how many people were staring at Nephise, either openly or in secret. She did not pay them any attention, so Sunny looked straight ahead and pretended to not care either. Of course, he was tensely studying everything and everyone around them through his shadow. Somehow, he felt as if he had returned to the Red Colosseum. Sunny almost expected the people surrounding them to start chanting "Glory" at any second. Of course, that did not happen. The cohort walked up the stairs and entered the grand hall, where they were led to massive doors that were carved of familiar wood. As the doors opened into a vast chamber full of exquisitely dressed people, a loud voice announced. Lady Changing Star of the Immortal Flame Clan. Ascended Song of the Fallen. Ascended Raised by Wolves. Ascended Nightingale. Ascended Sunless. For a moment, every conversation in the hall paused. Everyone turned to look at the new arrivals. Sunny frowned. The amount of pressure that crashed into him was enough to make a mundane person kneel. It was not that the guests were consciously exerting it, just the side effect of so many powerful people being gathered in one place. Just at first glance, he identified nearly 100 masters and a handful of saints in the crowd, with each of the latter basically glowing like a beacon of power in the sea of people, surrounded by a small island of empty space. A very large chunk of humanity's defensive capabilities were gathered in this hall. If Sunny was pressured, then Nephise must have felt as if a mountain landed on her. And yet, she did not bat an eye. A wave of whispers rose, barely audible in the harmonious hum of relaxing music. It's her. What? Changing Star is here. Look. It's the heiress of Immortal Flame. Even among the absolute elites, Neph's status was immense enough to create a commotion. The other four members got a lot of attention, too, as the brightest stars of the younger generation of Awakened. Both their SS designations and the rapid speed of their ascension made them noteworthy people. Subjected to hundreds of gazes, Nephice nodded curtly and walked toward the tables that offered drinks and refreshments. As she did, the arrival of another guest was announced, causing the excitement of the crowd to subside a little. Sunny felt incredibly awkward. So, what do we do now? Kai simply smiled. We don't have to do anything, really, before the host arrives and commences the ball. Usually we would use this time to walk around and socialize, but in this case, there is no need. Everyone will come to us. So, just enjoy yourself, smile, and answer politely if someone addresses you. Sunny shifted his shoulders. That is terrible advice. How was he supposed to enjoy himself and smile, knowing what was at stake? As for being polite, politeness often required a person to lie. What was he supposed to do if someone asked him a question that demanded a rude answer? Luckily, he had nothing to fear. Very soon, a stream of people started to approach them, somehow making it seem as if they all just happened to walk by. However, all their attention was concentrated on Nephice. Barely anyone spared a moment to chat with the other members of the cohort, and even then, Sunny was the last in line. Which suited him fine. Lady Changing Star, it is an honor to meet you. You made us all proud, young lady. I was actually friends with your grandfather. BVEC, I once fought a battle side by side with your parents. The memory of their valiance was forever etched into my heart. Everyone wanted to, if not become friends, then to at least establish a connection with the daughter of the hallowed clan that seemed to be rising from the ashes. Nephice remained calm, conversing with the great and powerful people that approached her in a neutral, but slightly stifled tone. Sunny could feel the flames burning in her soul growing hotter and hotter, however. She was filled with masterfully suppressed rage. Well, he would be, too. All these well-wishers could not wait to share the tales of how highly they valued and admired her parents and grandfather. And yet, they had been perfectly fine to do nothing when the Immortal Flame clan needed help. None of them had raised a hand to help Nephice when she was young, weak, and being hunted by the assassins of the hidden rulers of the Awakened Society. It was only now that she had become ascended, and an absolutely outstanding one at that, that they remembered past friendships and tried to ingratiate themselves to her. Their smiles and pretty words were worthless. Their friendship was worthless. This was all just a big charade. Sunny observed the elites with a bit of bewilderment. Were they all such shameless liars, or did they actually believe their own lies? In any case, this feast of deceit was nothing short of delectable. If only it was not so amateurish. After a while, he suddenly felt a cold shiver running down his spine. Turning his head slightly, Sunny noticed a familiar face. An exquisitely beautiful woman in a dazzling dress the color of red wine was approaching them. She was graceful and elegant, with a supple figure and full, scarlet lips. Her most striking feature, however, was her skin. It was gray like stormy clouds, smooth like silk, and devoid of any imperfections. The woman smiled, revealing perfectly even, pearly teeth. Lady Nephice. I am so glad to see you again. Changing Star looked at her and lingered for a moment. Then, she said. Saishin. I am, glad to see you, as well. Chapter 803 Friendly reminder: you are listening at NovelFull.audio. Saishin, the former lieutenant of the Bright Lord Gunlog and leader of the Handmaidens, was standing in front of them with a calm smile. Sunny had not seen her after the tumultuous escape from the Forgotten Shore, where she had held the line as the commander of the second defense bulwark of the Dreamer Army. He had thought that becoming a master would make him less susceptible to her presence, but it did not. Her striking beauty, her exotic looks, and the aura of mystery that surrounded Saishin were just as compelling as ever. The knowledge of how frightening her true nature was also made it impossible for him to remain unaffected. Not to mention the most important fact of all. Saishin was one of the adopted daughters of Ki Song, the ruler of the Great Song clan and one of the three sovereigns. If anything, knowing more about her background only made Sunny pay the beautiful woman extra attention. What the hell is she doing here? Saishan, meanwhile, looked at the other members of the cohort and said with a small, but seemingly sincere smile. Athena, Kai, Kasha. Sunless. It is good to see you doing well, too. Effie gave her a long look, then shrugged. Likewise. How have you and your girls been? After the return from the Forgotten Shore, half of the members of the former Dreamer army had decided to follow Cassie and became known as the Fire Keepers. Of the remaining half, most had chosen a different path, either remaining independent like Sunny and Aiko or joining various legacy clans. All the surviving handmaidens, however, had followed Saishan back to Song. Just like that, the great clan had not only received its lost daughter back, but also earned the utmost loyalty of a dozen extremely promising recruits. Come to think of it, that might have been one of the reasons why Valor wanted to gain the allegiance of the Fire Keepers so badly. A group of exceptional and supremely battle-hardened Awakened might not have been able to change the balance of power between the two great clans immediately, but in a few years, when the survivors of the Dreamer army started becoming masters or maybe even saints, eventually, that could easily change. Saishan responded in a serious tone. We are doing well. My clan embraced us with open arms. After reuniting with my sisters, I was also able to bring a lot of value to the Song family with my unique knowledge and experience. The long years I had spent on the Forgotten Shore were not for naught. She had been stuck in that hell for far longer than any of them. In fact, Sunny did not know how many years Saishan had spent in the Dark City, exactly, but it might have been as high as 9 or 10. Being able to survive and hold on to power for so long spoke a lot about how resourceful and dangerous the daughter of Ki Song was, especially considering that, in the end, she was the only one of the old guard who had managed to escape. No wonder the great clan was so eager to get her back. Saishan looked at them and smiled. Of course, we have yet to achieve the same measure of success as the 5 of you. Reaching ascension so soon after becoming awakened is no small feat. You have my respect. Her smile paled a little. I will be going away to challenge my own second nightmare in a few days, as a matter of fact. This ball is the last opportunity one have to experience the wonders of the waking world before that. She looked around wistfully and sighed. So, she is also in a hurry to become a master, huh? Sunny stared at the gray-skinned beauty with a bit of apprehension. Saishan was already scary enough as an awakened. How much more powerful would she become after ascending? Kai offered the former leader of handmaidens a reassuring smile. I am sure that you and your cohort will do fine. The second nightmare is a terrible challenge, but people who survived the Forgotten Shore are suited to face its dangers more than anyone else. You will triumph. Before Saishan could answer, Nephis finally spoke. Looking at the daughter of Song impassively, she said in her usual even tone. I have to admit. I am surprised to see you here. Saishan lingered for a moment. Oh. You must have heard about the recent disharmony between Song and Valor. Do not pay it too much attention, Lady Nephis. Despite our disagreements, it is still important to present a united front. I am here to keep up appearances. Changing Star thought for a moment, then nodded. I understand, you are here to send a message. However, I find it curious that a junior member like you was chosen above more senior representatives of the great clan Song. One can't help but wonder what message exactly such a choice is intended to deliver. Saishan's smile widened a little. Well, it is not my place to question the decisions of the elders. In any case, I am very happy that I got the chance to see you all again. While we were never truly friends, I value what you have done for me and my wards, as well as what we went through together, a great deal. Her pearly teeth glistened in the bright light of exquisite chandeliers, suddenly seeming much sharper. I hope that we will be able to deepen that bond one day. Of course, whether or not it blossoms into a real friendship depends on our decisions. Sunny sighed. Ah. Saishan looked at them one last time. Strangely, her gaze lingered on him for a few extra moments. Then, she politely excused herself and left to mingle with other guests of the ball. So that's what it was all about. Her meaning was more than clear. Clan Song decided to not go as far as making an earnest effort to spoil the negotiations with Valor and try to recruit the members of the cohort and the Fire Keepers into its ranks instead. However, they did issue a warning: make the right decision if you know what's good for you. Stay away from our rivals, or else. That threat might have been packaged into an exquisitely beautiful cover, but the underlying message remained quite clear. Looking at the back of Saishan as she was walking away, Sunny shook his head. Did I somehow end up involved in politics? By the spell, I did, didn't I? Curses, why can't a guy just grow stronger than everyone in the world and unreasonably rich in peace? Chapter 804 Whispering Blade. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. A few minutes later, the atmosphere in the great hall suddenly changed. The hum of voices grew quiet, and many of the guests shifted, turning to a particular spot. As Sunny watched, a tall figure appeared on a wide balcony above them. The man was strong and severe, with a sharp face and even sharper, cold eyes. His black hair was touched by silver at the temples. He was wearing an elegant attire that somehow looked like a suit of impregnable armor despite being made of nothing but black fabric. His vermilion cloak moved slightly, as if touched by invisible wind. As soon as the man appeared, Sunny felt a considerable pressure descending on the hall. The dignified stranger radiated so much power and authority that it was hard not to admire him, or fear him. He was a saint, without a doubt. What was more, his features looked slightly like that of Mordred and Morgan. For a moment, Sunny thought that he was looking at Anvil of Valor himself, but no, that could not be. Although the familial likeness was there, it was not too pronounced. The mythical sovereign was also not supposed to be able to enter the waking world easily, let alone openly show himself in public. That would just go against everything that the sovereigns did to remain in the shadows. This must be Saint Madoc of Valor, also known as Whispering Blade. Saint Madoc was one of Anvil's siblings and the nominal leader of the great clan Valor. Of course, Sunny knew who truly called the shots, but the status of this powerful man was by no means for show. Whispering Blade was a legendary warrior and one of humanity's most formidable champions in his own right. As the guests quieted down, Saint Madoc looked at them from above with his steely blue eyes, and then smiled slightly. Instantly, the pressure receded, making the mundane humans in the crowd sigh with relief. Morgan's uncle spoke, his strong voice easily reaching into every corner of the great hall. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests. Welcome to the annual ball of the great clan Valor. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome you all under our roof once again. In the past year, many things have happened. Some of our brothers and sisters are not with us anymore. A somber silence settled over the hall. Every year brought a lot of death to awakened. Even masters were not spared from that fate. This year, in particular, had dealt a heavy blow to humanity. Even though few knew of what had really happened, the absence of Saint Cormac was clearly felt by many. Transcendents were so exceedingly rare that the loss of even one of them echoed across the world. As the guests turned somber, Whispering Blade's smile suddenly widened, dispelling the solemn mood. Despite that, it pleases me to see many new faces among you. Humanity has grown stronger yet again. New heroes rose to carry the torch for those who had fallen in battle. With champions like these, our world has nothing to fear. Despite it all, we persevere. But more than that, we rise. Nothing can stop our ascension. He looked at the guests, and then sighed. Well, those of you who know me also know that I am not one for long speeches. To be honest, this one was actually written by my beloved wife, who is far more eloquent and wise than me. Not to mention pleasant to look at. A wave of polite chuckles spread through the crowd. Saint Madoc smiled once again. Today is not a day for sorrow. Today is a day for joy. And so, let the ball commence. As soon as he said that, the space in the middle of the hall was cleared, and the musician started to play a magnificent and emotional composition. Whispering Blade danced the first dance himself, accompanied by a beautiful, mature woman. Moving with elegance and grace, they both looked breathtakingly splendid. Soon, other pairs joined them. Sunny observed the dance with a bit of interest. He had not known what to really expect from this ball, but to his relief, it was nothing like the awkward and almost comical sight that he had witnessed in the nightclub a few weeks ago. The dancers were much more purposeful and elaborate in their movements. Both partners had to move in synchronicity to not disturb the flow of the dance, following the music with surprising skill. The gracefulness of their steps, the exquisite attires, the radiant physical beauty common among the awakened, the luxurious decorations of the great hall, all of it made the ball look rather dazzling. He was also able to appreciate the ceremony due to his familiarity with shadow dance. Of course, his battle style was not a literal dance, however, it was derived from one. In fact, every battle style had something in common with dancing, since both had to do with motion, coordination, agility, and rhythm. So, even if Sunny was never taught how to dance, he was able to quickly learn the basics from just observing those who were better versed in it. He could have even joined the dancers, if he wanted to. Of course, he didn't. Sunny noticed that it was customary for men to invite the women to dance. As he watched, many handsome and distinguished guests offered their hands to their beautiful counterparts and led them to the center of the hall. More than a few burning gazes landed on Nephice, but were quickly doused by her cold, unapproachable expression. Fortunately or unfortunately, the other members of the cohort were caught in the cone of silence that surrounded her, so no one approached them either. After some time, Kai invited Cassie to dance, while Effie wandered away in the direction of the tables that were barely standing, burdened by the weight of various delicacies. Sunny, meanwhile, grew bored. Damn, how long do we have to wait? Are these negotiations going to start, or what? Eventually, he glanced at Nephice, then left her and walked away in search of a bathroom. A few minutes later, he was washing his hands in front of a mirror. Looking at his pale reflection, Sunny lingered for a few moments and then said, "I know that you are there. Stop hiding." Nothing happened for a few seconds, then, his reflection suddenly offered him a pleasant smile. "Oh. How did you know?" Chapter 805 Conversation with a Mirror. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. When his reflection suddenly spoke, Sunny flinched and jumped back. A startled expression appeared on his face. He stared at the mirror with wide eyes, then cursed and remained silent for a few seconds. Finally, Sunny uttered through gritted teeth, "I did not know. I just developed a habit of saying random rubbish to mirrors in case something like this happens. Who knew that this time you would actually turn up?" Mordred, who disturbingly wore his face, blinked a couple of times, then laughed, "So it was a bluff. Goodness. I can't believe I fell for this trick." Sunny's reflection shook its head. Sunny himself, who felt incredibly troubled by the sight of his own likeness being inhabited by the Prince of Nothing, sucked in a breath of air, and then hissed, "What are you even doing here? Have you entirely lost your mind? This is the stronghold of Clan Valor." Mordred shrugged. "Why? Can't I visit my own clan's ball?" Sunny suppressed the desire to palm his face, "Not if you want to live." But then again, why would he care if Mordred lived or died? Actually, it would have been wonderful if the troublesome mirror wraith was caught and either destroyed or imprisoned again by his mighty family. Sunny would have one less headache if they did, unless Mordred decided to trade away his secrets, of course. Damnation. The Prince of Nothing, meanwhile, waved his hand dismissively. "Ah, don't worry so much, Sunless, I am not here to do anything, I just wanted to take a peek at the festivities, no one will notice." Judging by his confident smile, Mordred was sufficiently certain of that statement. This probably meant that he had acquired at least one potent anti-divination tool. Well, the mere fact that the great and mighty clan Valor had failed to track him down, yet, already hinted at that possibility. If not for Sonny's random shot in the dark, no one would indeed have noticed the transient reflection. Mordred looked at him and lingered for a few moments. Then he said in a pensive tone, "You know, Sunless, for someone who keeps denying his ties with the great clans, you sure brush sides with them a lot." Sonny was so outraged that he lost the gift of speech for a second. "And whose fault is that, you bastard? If you didn't involve me in your mess, I would have been living happily ever after somewhere else." "Well, probably," Mordred awkwardly coughed. Then he regained his composure and said with a bit of reproach, "I already apologized, didn't I? In any case, complications or not, you should choose your friends carefully." Sunless, Sonny glared at the reflection for a bit. "Am I having a déjà vu? I swear I just had this exact conversation with someone else a few minutes ago. You did not steal Seishan's body by any chance, did you?" Mordred tilted his head a little. "I don't think so." "Ah. Who is Seishan?" Sonny opened his mouth, then frowned. No, he wouldn't have. The damned lunatic was already being hunted by one great clan. Killing an heiress of another would do him no good. "An acquaintance of mine. Never mind about her." Mordred smiled. "If you say so. I must say, you do have a lot of interesting acquaintances." A curious expression appeared on the reflection's face. "That changing star is rather fascinating. To think that the immortal Flame clan was able to return to a semblance of its former glory. And with the help of a young dream spawn, no less. Maybe I should take her body, instead. What do you think, Sunless? Should I?" He was obviously probing to get a reaction out of Sonny, but luck was not on his side. Sonny simply shrugged and said indifferently, "Be my guest." It seemed as if he was absolutely disinterested in whether Mordred would kill and replace Nephice or not. Of course, he wasn't, not really. He just thought that the Prince of Nothing would dearly regret trying to consume Changing Star's soul. Not only was she a tyrant, which would make battling her a nightmare, he also suspected that her soul possessed its own formidable defenses. Nephice had already hinted that the lineage of Sun God strengthened it somehow. But that only accounted for the quantity of her force. There was also the quality. Sonny had a hunch that Mordred would be burning himself alive if he tried to invade her radiant soul sea. Wouldn't that be a sight to see? He glanced at his reflection, then said coldly, "Is this all you wanted to say? Because if that's it, I have a ball to return to." Then, Sonny scoffed and added, "And by the way, didn't you give a very pompous speech about how I should pray to never meet you again, the last time we saw each other? Kind of presumptuous of you to then go ahead and place yourself straight in my sights. In a bathroom, of all places." Mordred's smile paled a little. "Ah, that. I did not forget about that, Sunless. Truth be told, I am still very peeved about what you have done. Come to think of it, maybe I should do something to lessen my frustration. Say, which of your friends do you value the least?" Sonny's fist slammed in the mirror, shattering it. Mordred laughed, staring at him from the shards. His face, Sonny's face, became distorted by the cracks. "Oh, Sunless, Sunless, so passionate." Sonny stared at the broken mirror for a few moments, then said through gritted teeth, "I value all my friends, you bastard. Affection is not something you can assign a numerical value to, and then compare which number is bigger. Well, you wouldn't know, I guess. Not only do you care about no one has most likely ever cared about you, either." He took a step forward and stared directly at his reflection. "You like to talk big, Mordred, and make it seem as if I should be afraid of you. But that is true the other way around, too. I can be scary when I want to, too. Think long. And think hard. Before making me your enemy. Or you will learn to fear the shadows. Mordred stopped laughing and looked at him silently for a few long moments. His smile slowly disappeared. After a few moments of silence, the Prince of Nothing sighed. We understand each other, then. Let's not become enemies, Sunless. Crushing you won't bring me any joy. With that, he disappeared, as if he had never been there. The reflection still looked the same, but the alien presence seemed to be gone from it. All that remained was a broken, distorted, angry image of Sunny. He grimaced, and then turned away. We'll see who crushes whom, bastard. If time comes. Chapter 806 A Dance of Light and Shadow. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. After returning to the dancing hall, Sunny saw it in a new light. His perception had shifted, making everything seem darker and more dangerous. He had already been apprehensive about the crowd of guests, but now, every one of them looked like a potential threat. Mordred might have said that he was not planning to do anything and had just come to take a look, but could the banished prince be trusted? As far as Sunny was concerned, the lunatic could have been on his way to publicly assassinate one of his relatives, or slaughter as many as he could. Right now, much worse. He could be hiding inside of anyone. Every guest was a potential host, every mundane human. Every awakened. Every master. None of them were beyond suspicion. Even saints were not off the list. Perhaps. Sunny suppressed a groan. Curse it all. There were two carriers of divine aspects in the world that had made it their life's goal to destroy the great clan Valor at all costs. And now, both of them were in this building. Even if nothing happened. The threat alone made him itchy. The great hall where dozens of beautiful pairs danced suddenly did not look as splendid. Turning around, Sunny looked at Nephice. Lingered for a few moments. And then walked in her direction with steady steps. As he came close, he offered her a hand and asked, "Shall we dance?" Neph looked at him in confusion for a couple of seconds, then shrugged and placed her hand in his. Together. They walked to the middle of the hall. Sunny put his second hand on her waist. While she put hers on his shoulder, suddenly. They were extremely close to each other. Sunny's heart skipped a beat. It was in moments like this one that he missed having to. Without wasting any time, Sunny led Neph into a dance. It wasn't too hard, he just had to listen to the music and repeat what the other dancers were doing. With his proficiency in shadow dance, understanding the logic and cadence of their movements was incredibly easy for him. Although Sunny was dancing for the first time in his life, he looked more comfortable and adept at it than most of the guests. Changing Star seemed like a natural, too. Perhaps it was due to her own combat mastery, or perhaps she had received lessons as an heiress of a legacy clan. In any case, almost instantly after they started the dance, the pair caught a lot of admiring stares. Sunny did not care, he had much bigger problems on his mind, trying to not let her closeness affect him too much and failing at it. He waited for a bit and gathered his thoughts. Finally, Sunny said. His voice drowned by the music and the hum of the great hall. I've been meaning to ask. The time to hide his head in the sand was over. Nephice silently raised an eyebrow, prompting him to continue. What, exactly, are you planning to do today? You know that Valor won't take no for an answer. They want to have all of us, but if that is not possible, they'll only settle for getting at least one. That way, they'll be assured that the rest of us won't join a rival faction. So, which one of us is going to become a retainer of the great clan Valor? Changing Star lingered for a while, allowing him to lead her in the dance. Her hand rested easily on his shoulder. After a few steps, she suddenly asked. You don't really understand, do you? Sunny did not frown, but his eyes suddenly became darker. I don't. What is it that you think I don't understand? A somber expression slowly appeared on her face. Valor and Song are not rival factions, Sunny. They're war camps. As they spun under the light of beautiful chandeliers, she leaned even closer and said. I've studied the facts for a long time after returning to the waking world. The ripples caused by the death of Saint Cormac, the subtle machinations that happen in the darkness, the growing imbalance of power between Bastion and Ravenheart, even the timing of Syshen challenging the second nightmare. It all paints a clear picture. A slight scowl appeared on Sunny's face. "What are you trying to say?" Nephi sighed. "I am trying to make you see that the conflict between the great clans has grown into something more than mere disagreement. They are at war, or rather, they will be soon." Sunny felt her hand growing tense in his own. War. Wait, what does a war between great clans even look like? Changing Star shook her head. Something like that has never happened before. So, who knows? 3 things are certain, however. It will be hidden. It will be bloody. It will claim the lives of many people. He suddenly felt cold. Damned legacies. Antarctica is about to fall, and they choose that exact moment to lunge at each other's throats. Bastards. Sunny remained silent for several steps, and then looked at Nephi intently. "All right. But what does it have to do with us?" She suddenly gripped his shoulder tighter and met his gaze. Cold, dangerous white sparks were dancing in her eyes. "Don't you see? It has everything to do with us." Sunny stopped himself from snarling. "I don't." "Nephi, whether the great clans are embroiled into a secret war or not does not change anything. You are still too small and weak to openly oppose them. Please, tell me that you understand that. You were the one who said that these people are too strong. That their power is too absolute." Changing Star stared at him for a while, her face turning impassive. After a few moments of silence, she said. "I remember. I understand." She looked down, and then added. Which is why the answer to your question might not be what you want to hear, Sunny. You asked me which one of us will become a member of the great clan. Nephi raised her head and looked him straight in the eyes. Then, she said evenly. "It's me. I will join Valor." Chapter 807 From Within. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. When Sunny heard what Nephi had to say, he almost stepped on her foot. His rhythm was broken, making it difficult to remain in the flow of the dance. He narrowly avoided stumbling, regained his composure, and threw a burning gaze at her. "What?" Her expression did not change. "You heard me." Sunny opened his mouth, lingered for a moment, then simply turned around and pulled her by the hand. Despite the fact that many people stared at this sudden turn of events, he cut through the dancing guests, forcing Neff to follow. They left the middle of the great hall, then disappeared from the central chamber entirely. Finding himself in a corridor that ran along the length of the dancing hall, Sunny walked swiftly, searching for an empty room. Eventually, he had to settle for a kitchen of sorts. Several chefs and their assistants were busy preparing more refreshments for the guests of the ball, or rather, they had been. Even before Sunny entered the room, the shadows inside suddenly moved and grew darker, startling the kitchen staff. Throwing a heavy glance at them, he said in an even voice. "Leave." The chef stared at the 2 masters in confusion for a couple of moments, then silently backed away and left through a different door, their faces pale. Sunny and Nephi were left alone. He waited for a bit, then let go of her hand and outstretched his own. A strange flute carved of emerald bone appeared in it from a swirl of sparks. Sunny brought it to his lips and blew into the hole. Surprisingly, no sound came out of the flute. Instead, it seemed to have absorbed all sounds, enveloping them in a cone of silence. Now, no one would have been able to listen in on their conversations. Sunny's shadows also kept watch outside the kitchen, just to make sure. Finally, he turned to Nephi and snarled. "You. Join Valor." What the hell?" Changing Star sighed, then took a step back and leaned on the wall. Then, she spoke in her usual calm, steady voice. "Why are you so surprised?" Sunny stared at her in stunned silence. Then, he shook his head. What about your great goals? After all the crazy stunts you pulled, after all that talk about wishing to bring the three ghouls to their knees and destroy them, you are just going to join them. Neff's eyes grew somber. My plans did not change, Sonny. He frowned. So you are going to destroy Valor, but you are also going to become one of their own. Don't you see the contradiction? She looked at him intensely, then said with boiling, but suppressed emotion in her voice. There is no contradiction. On the contrary, this is the only way I can advance my goals. Nephi's took a step forward and pierced him with a searing gaze. The sovereigns are, indeed, too strong. Their power is, indeed, too fearsome. And I am truly too weak to contend with them, for now. However, they will fall by my hand, in the end. Did you hope that 2 years of being lost in the dream realm would have dulled my resolve? Did you think that I would give up? Sonny shook his head with a dark expression. Changing Star smiled. No, my resolve was only made sharper. I spent so many days, so many nights thinking about how to move forward and bring these old monsters down. It was not too hard to realize that if my own strength is not enough, I have to borrow it from someone else. Whose strength should I borrow, then? Ah, but that is so obvious. If the sovereigns are so powerful, why would I not use their own power to destroy them? Sonny blinked slowly. So, divide and conquer. This is your great plan. Nephi shrugged. They are already divided. I have to thank you for that, by the way. Although the conflict between Valor and Song had been brewing for a long time, the sudden appearance of the Dreamer army made it worse. But most of all, the death of Saint Cormac and the return of the banished Prince of War was what finally made it intolerable for the great clans. He scowled. What? What does Mordred have to do with any of this? Changing Star smiled darkly. He is in the same position as me. Which means that he will do the same thing as me. He would have sought out a way to use one of the sovereigns against the other, too. Sonny's eyes widened. Mordred had a vendetta against his two fathers, both the one who had spawned him and the one who had raised him. That left only. Don't tell me, is that lunatic going to join forces with the Song clan? Nephi nodded with satisfaction. I would be surprised if he did not already. And if I can come to that conclusion, then that means that Valor knows, as well. Why do you think the strife between the two great clans has suddenly grown so dire? Valor has fewer saints. Thanks to Sishan, Valor has fewer promising awakened seeds. And now, one of their most formidable creations has joined hands with the adversary. How do you think they'll react? Sonny looked at her grimly. Not well. Changing Star lingered for a few moments, then nodded. But that is what puts me in a unique position. Yes, I am small and weak. Yes, my individual strength is more or less insignificant. However, because of how disadvantaged the great clan Valor is, they desperately need me. My value in this situation is disproportionate to what it would have been otherwise. Which is why they are ready to put aside their desire to see me dead, and are willing to embrace me instead. Sonny scoffed. That is all great. But why would you want to embrace them, too? Wouldn't it be better to stay away and watch as the two great clans maul each other, then swoop in and finish off the weakened victor? Nephi shook her head. No matter how much one of the great clans weakens, its armor would still be too strong and impenetrable for me to break through it. He raised an eyebrow. So, what? Changing Star looked at him, cold white flames dancing in her eyes. So I won't try to. Instead, I'm going to bypass the armor and attack them from within. Chapter 808, a long-awaited conversation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sonny grimaced. What Nephi had said made sense, as much as the word sense could be applied to her. Changing Star wanted to destroy the nightmare spell, and the sovereigns were in her way. Just like Gunlog, the ruthless tyrant of the Bright Castle, they had seemingly given up on pursuing liberation from the spell, and instead settled for the great power that it had already bestowed upon them. What was worse, they were holding others back from rising high enough to threaten their position, at least that was how it looked from below. Perhaps the sovereigns had other reasons for their despotism and inaction, but Sunny had no way of knowing if they did. Not that it mattered to Nephise. To her, they were simply an obstacle that had to be destroyed. Her personal desire to avenge the Immortal Flame clan and bring retribution to those who had betrayed her father only made the task sweeter. However, her enemies were much too strong. She would only be able to challenge them if she became supreme herself, but the path to supremacy was guarded by the very people she needed to destroy. Faced with this dead end, she had decided to use the sovereign's own power to vanquish them. She also wanted to infiltrate the ranks of her enemy and put herself in the position to attack one of the great clans from within, when the time came. Sunny let out a heavy sigh. So, let me get this straight. You are going to join Clan Valor, fight for them until Clan Song is destroyed to earn Anvil's trust, then turn your blade against him. Nephise lingered for a few moments, then shrugged. More or less. Why? He rubbed his face. This is a terrible plan. There are more holes in this plan than in Swiss cheese, whoever Sui is. Who says that Valor will win this war? Who says that Anvil will ever treat you as anything but a latent threat? Do you think that he is a fool? Surely, he knows how much you have to hate his guts. Changing Star looked at him calmly. I do. I say who wins. I say whether he trusts me or not. It all depends on me, does it not? If I want the Great Song clan to fall, I have to make sure that it falls. If I want to win Anvil's favor, I have to make sure that he favors me. I am not a passive observer in this, Sunny. I have agency to shape the future into what I want it to be, or at least try to. Sure, the chances of success are poor. But when were the odds ever on our side? Sunny scoffed, then shook his head. I'll give you that. Our luck was always terrible. However, there is a difference between being thrown into overwhelming danger against your will and deciding to put yourself at risk of your own volition. Unlike before, we don't have to be underdogs. You are choosing this. Nephise shook her head, as well. That is where you are wrong, Sunny. Do you really think that I have any choice? Do you think that I can turn back now? That the sovereigns will ever let me be? No, it is too late for that. It is as you said, Valor are determined to have their pound of flesh. All I can choose is where they sink their teeth. He glared at her for a few moments, then spat. Aren't you forgetting something? Looking at him, Changing Star frowned. What? Sunny took a step forward. Me. You are forgetting me. I have a say in this too, God damn it. She remained silent for a while. Eventually, Nephise said. I am not forcing you to do anything. You don't have to follow me to Valor if you don't wish to. A crooked smile appeared on his face. Oh, great. But is this really true? There is a certain bond between us, after all. I am only free to do as I wish until you decide otherwise. Who knows if your mood will change one day? Neph stared at him for a few long seconds. Then, she sighed and crossed her arms. Ah, so this is what it's all about. Sunny gritted his teeth, then said slowly. Since we are talking about it, let's talk. This conversation was a long time coming. So, Nephise, tell me, what are you going to do with your power over me? Her face remained impassive. Neph looked at him coldly for a moment, and then said. Nothing. I will never order you to do something for me, ever again. Sunny was already opening his mouth to retort before she finished speaking, but then froze. He stood still for a few moments, then let out a long breath. Well, good. Because if you ever tried, one of us would have died. That is not a threat, just a fact. Suddenly, white sparks ignited in Changing Star's eyes. She leaned forward slightly and said, her voice full of barely suppressed emotion. "And do you know why?" Suddenly feeling a sense of unease, Sunny frowned. "Beov, no, I can't say that I do." "Why?" She took a step forward and stopped in front of him, almost as close as they had been during their dance. Her face was still, but her eyes were full of searing flame. "Because I don't need anyone to follow me against their will. I don't need a magical collar to make people serve me. I don't need slaves. That is not enough for me, Sunny. Why should I settle for submission when I can have loyalty? People who will follow me, serve me, and obey me will do so because that is their most ardent desire. They will do so with a smile. If I ever want to make you mine, Sunny, you will become mine, not because you were forced to, but because you would want to. That is also a fact." He stared at her for a few moments, startled by the sudden intensity of her words. Then, a stubborn expression appeared on his face. "Aren't you too full of yourself? Who do you think you are, to decide what I want?" Nephi's looked at him, then turned away and sighed. I am the person who knows you best in the world, Sunny. 2 worlds, even." She lingered for a few moments, and then added quietly. "As I said, I will never force you to do anything. But whether you like it or not, our fates are intertwined. And that bond has nothing to do with your innate ability. In truth, they were entangled the moment we met, in front of the academy gates. We just did not know it yet. You can't escape it. Can't escape fate." Sunny looked at Nephi's for a long time, and then smiled darkly. "Watch me." With that, he dismissed the bone flute, turned around, and left the kitchen. Entering the corridor, Sunny walked away. His nostrils were flaring, and his face were contorted by an expression of anger. As he walked, he took out his communicator and dialed a familiar number. After some time, a female voice resounded from the speaker. "Sunny. What a nice surprise. It's good to hear from you." He hesitated for a few moments, and then took a deep breath. Then, Sunny smiled and answered in a friendly tone. "Master Jet. Hey. I have a question for you." He paused for a second, and then asked. "How cold is it in Antarctica?" Chapter 809 True Strength. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Sunny was riled and angry. Once again, talking to Nephi's made him lose his sense of balance. However, the decision he made was not an emotional one. He had enough composure to keep a clear head even while being affected by seething feelings. Years of battles and dire conflicts had taught him how to keep a cool head. So, his choice was cold and calculated. 2 things had become clear during the conversation. The first one was very simple: Nephis intended to join the great clan Valor, while Sunny didn't want to have anything to do with it. It was one thing to become a retainer of a powerful and prosperous clan in order to make use of its vast knowledge, arsenal, and resources. Despite his strong desire to remain independent, Sunny had entertained the idea himself. However, it was a completely different thing to join an embattled clan that was on the verge of entering a destructive and bloody war against a similarly fearsome adversary. To add insult to injury, Valor was on the losing end of the equation. Their enemy, the great clan Song, held all the advantages. And even worse than that was the idea of joining a warring faction with conscious plans of betraying it further down the line. Nephis was more than willing to eventually face not one, but both great clans in battle. She had her goals and conviction, but Sunny just wanted to be left alone. He saw no reason to follow her into the Dragon's Maw. More than that, with her joining Valor, the initial condition that had forced him into the damned negotiations in the first place was resolved. Since Valor was willing to settle for recruiting just one member of the cohort, and Changing Star was willing to play the role of the recruit, then why the hell would he follow suit? In short, despite all the contradictory feelings raging in Sunny's heart, the situation was rather straightforward. There was no compelling reason for him to enter into service of the great clan, but there was a convenient opportunity for him to take a step back and walk away. He would be a fool not to use it. Of course, in reality, things were a bit more complicated. What Changing Star had said might have angered him, but she was not wrong. Their fates did, indeed, seem to be intertwined. From being born in the same year to receiving divine and complementing aspects, from meeting at the gates of the academy to being sent to the same small patch of the forgotten shore, whether by coincidence or not, their connection went far beyond the tether of the shadow bond. Sunny had a strong suspicion that his intrinsic attribute, fated, had a lot to do with placing Nephi's in his path. And as much as Sunny wished to defy fate, he was not arrogant enough to think that he was ready to break its chains just yet. He could already see how, no matter what he did, he would not be able to escape colliding against Changing Star again. She had been right when she said that escaping the notice of the great clans entirely was impossible for them, more so for her, but also true for Sunny. With his meteoric rise, his special strategic asset designation, and his connection to both Nephi and Mordred, not to mention Shadow God and Weaver, coming into contact with the sovereigns and their domains was just a matter of time. Even if Neph joined Valor and Sunny did not, they would most likely meet again soon enough. The question, then, was more about the nature of their future relationship than whether it would exist or not. So, what could Sunny do to shape it into something that had a semblance of corresponding to his desires? Perhaps the most important revelation that had resulted from their conversation was the nature of Neph's intentions towards Sunny and her power over him. Sunny had spent several weeks burying his head in the sand and avoiding this pivotal discussion. As the result, those weeks had been, perhaps some of the nicest in his life. However, his actions had also caused everything to blow up in his face in the end. Nephi had said in no uncertain terms that she had no intention of ever issuing another order to him. Not because of any moral consideration, but simply because it was beneath her. Changing Star had no need for an unwilling slave. She disdained the idea of forcing anyone to obey her. Instead, she planned to have people follow her of their own free will. Instead of enslaving anyone, she preferred to have people enslave and bind themselves by their desire to serve her. Neph had told him that she would never force him to do anything. But she also seemed to be certain that he would follow her willingly, in the end. And that, to Sunny, was the core problem of the dynamic between them. He believed that Nephi valued him. She even respected him. But despite all that, she still saw him as a follower. And a follower could never be an equal. Damn it. Worst of all, her stance was not baseless. Sunny couldn't help but think back to his conversation with Effie. The Huntress had told him once that he would never be stronger than Changing Star, because Changing Star had something that he lacked. Conviction. Sunny had been tempted to dismiss her well-meant, but biting remark. However, he could not dismiss the fact that despite all his desperate attempts, despite him almost killing himself several times to catch up to Nephi, there was still a noticeable gap in power and accomplishment between them. He did not think that he lacked determination. Gods knew that very few people have pushed themselves as hard, and endured as much, as he had. But his last conversation with Changing Star had finally given Sunny an inkling of what it was exactly that he lacked. As far as Sunny saw it, his determination was no less intense than Neph's. However, all his goals were internal. All he did was react to things. He did not strive to reach anything, instead, he only strived to avoid and get away from things. Get away from danger, from poverty, from fate itself. He had always been reactive. Neph, on the contrary, had always been active. She had always pursued a goal that was larger than herself. As the result, her conviction pushed her forward like an external force, while Sunny was stuck trying to pull himself up with nothing propelling him forward. That was why he was destined to always lag behind. Selfish desire to attain material wealth and live free would never be able to push him as hard and as far as Changing Star's insane and unattainable dream was pushing her. At least that was his current thinking. Maybe it was all senseless crap. In any case, Sunny was determined to try and find an equally powerful motivation. Either it would help him, or it would not. However, no matter what happened, he was not satisfied being seen as a valued follower instead of an equal. He was still determined to grow stronger, much stronger, and if conviction was what it took to speed up his progress, he was willing to give it a try. Where was one supposed to find conviction, though? Well, Sunny was pretty sure that attempting to save hundreds of millions of people in Antarctica was a good place to start. That was where he was going to go in search of true strength. Chapter 8:10 Secret Gift. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. A couple of days later, Sunny was staring at his living room with a strange expression on his face. Everything had already been settled. He was leaving on another long expedition, this time, in the waking world instead of the dream realm. Somehow, it promised to be even more of a nightmare. Well, whatever. High matters of fate and conviction aside, Antarctica was still a perfect place for him to grow stronger. Now that Sunny was a master, it was not as easy for him to gather shadow fragments. Only fallen nightmare creatures and those more powerful would do. Finding swarms of them was a task in and of itself, and the southern quadrant that was about to be devoured by an endless horde of abominations offered a perfect opportunity. Not only would he be able to work toward becoming a tyrant, test his mettle, and sharpen his skill, there would also be plenty of soul shards for him to collect, which he needed to continue practicing weaving. So, Sunny was supposed to be gathering his things and preparing to leave. The thing was, that he had already done that before the ball, just in case he would have to run away in haste. Sunny had prepared so thoroughly that he could just walk out of the door and disappear right now. Ha! Weird. He sighed and then checked the refrigerator again, just to make sure that he did not leave anything that could spoil there. Nope, all clean. His communicator vibrated, then displayed a notification. The title of a network article appeared in view. Breaking news. A young hero is adopted by the brother-in-arms of her late father. Changing Star joins hands with the great clan Valor. The corner of his mouth twitched. At that moment, the door opened, letting in Effie and Kai. The two looked around, noticing the condition of the house. A few moments later, the huntress shook her head. Damn, you are really leaving. Sunny closed the refrigerator, then walked over and patted her on the shoulder. I am. Effie stared at him for a couple of moments, then sighed. And you're still not going to tell us where? He smiled. I'm not at liberty to say. Don't worry, though. You'll probably learn in about a month. She blinked. What's that supposed to mean? Sunny waved a hand. It just means that you'll know soon. Effie remained silent for a few moments, then shrugged with irritation. Well, all right. Be that way, then. Sunny hesitated for a bit. Finally, he asked. What about you? And the others? This time, it was Kai who answered. You must have already seen the news. It hasn't been officially announced yet, but a thing like that is hard to keep secret. Nephis is being adopted by Clan Valor. Cassie and the Fire Keepers will follow her as retainers. As for Effie and I, well, to be honest, we haven't decided yet. Sunny glanced at his friends with a somber expression. What are you guys thinking? Effie leaned on the wall and grimaced. I don't know. I was always thinking about becoming a master, but weirdly, I never really thought about what I would do after. Those pompous Valor folks rub me the wrong way, but they do have a lot to offer. Plus, pretty much everyone I know is with them now. Kai smiled weakly. I am even more lost. I didn't even have thoughts of becoming a master. Now that I am. I want to do some good, I guess. It's just hard to determine what is the best way to do it. Sunny lingered for a few moments. A heavy sigh escaped from his lips. Well, don't be in a rush to make a decision. Wait for April, at least. It was February right now. By April, the collapse of Antarctica would be slowly starting, and the government would have already announced voluntary mobilization. Sunny had wanted to tell his friends about the approaching disaster, but Master Jet insisted on keeping it confidential, for now. He was not sure that Effie and Kai would want to go there, anyway. The two of them, meanwhile, glanced at each other. Then, Kai cautiously asked. "Does it have anything to do with your sudden departure?" Sunny nodded. "It does. Don't ask anything else, though, or you'll put me in an awkward position." Neither of them did, respecting his request. A strange silence settled between them. Finally, Sunny scoffed. "What are you guys doing? It's not like we're saying goodbye. I'm still anchored at the ivory tower, you fools. I can always hop in the dream realm and meet you there." Kai scratched the back of his head. "Oh, yeah, true. I didn't think about that." Sunny shook his head. "Same goes for Nephice and Cassie, since they're not planning to move to Bastion yet. We might not be an active cohort anymore, but we're still a big, dysfunctional family of sorts. I can guarantee that you won't miss me. In fact, you'll probably wish that I appeared in front of you faces less often." He grinned and then gestured to the door. "In any case, thanks for dropping by, but now I really have to go. I'm on a bit of a schedule." He walked them outside, then watched as they boarded a PTV and left. There were no emotional goodbyes, since what he had said was true. They would all be seeing each other in the dream realm often, no matter where they were in the waking world. So, that meant that he had one last thing to do. Sunny sealed the house by inputting a security code into the lock panel, looked at it one last time, and walked to one of the neighboring buildings. He took out his communicator, sent a short message, and then waited for a bit. A minute later, a slightly surprised teenage girl walked out onto the porch, wearing cozy home clothes. "Sunny. Why are you here? We're not supposed to have a lesson today." He smiled, and then pointed to the backpack that hung from his shoulder. "Hey, Rain. I just came by to say that I'll be going away again. This time, it might take a bit longer for me to return." Her expression subtly changed. "Oh." She remained silent for a while, then asked in a guarded, tentative voice. Is it going to be dangerous again?" Sunny shrugged with a carefree expression. "Dangerous? Well, I guess. I'm pretty certain that I can handle it, though. I'm a pretty tough guy. So, don't worry." He sighed, and then added. "Plus, I am staying in the real world this time. You can message me whenever. The network connection is going to be patchy where I'm going, so I might not be able to answer immediately. I will eventually, though. That's a promise." Finally, she relaxed a little. "Really? That's great." He nodded. After hesitating for a few moments, Sunny took a step closer and said. "You are going to turn 16 in a couple of months, Rain. That means that you have to be ready. You might be chosen by the spell, or you might not. In any case, I think that you are sufficiently prepared." He fell silent for a bit, and then added. "I taught you as much as I could. The rest depends on you. Keep practicing with your sword. Keep sharpening your mind, as well. Most importantly, keep working on your mentality." Rain looked at him and nodded seriously. "I will." She did not notice that something strange had happened in the spot where their shadows intersected. A massive, dark silhouette that resembled a Stygian serpent flowed from Sunny's shadow, then hid itself in hers. Sunny had invoked one of Soul Serpent's abilities. Grace of Shadows, Ability Description. The master of the Soul Serpent can grace another with the trust and companionship of their shadow guide. One should be careful whom they bestow with their grace, and trusting others with the loyalty of shadows is the same as sharing one's soul, and thus should not be offered lightly. He could not give Rain any memories. Neither could he give her any echoes. Rain did not possess an aspect or a soul core to encompass them. She certainly did not possess a shadow core to receive one of his shadows. But Serpent was different. Grace of Shadows allowed it to accompany anyone who had a shadow, including a mundane human. So, Sunny transferred Serpent to Rain and commanded it to hide itself unless the girl was in mortal danger. With the help of an ascended devil, she would be able to survive anything. Sunny knew that by providing Rain with his handicap, he might have been stunting her own growth. But he did not care. His sister did not have to grow strong, or die. He was more than capable of being strong for the both of them. Looking at her, he smiled. Well, anyway. Don't be a stranger. If you need advice, just message me. You're my only student, after all, so if you suddenly die, my reputation will be ruined. No one will ever hire me as a tutor again. Rain glared at him for a moment, then scoffed. Why would I die? I'm too smart for that. You, however, make sure not to die yourself. I won't be able to brag that my tutor is a master if you're dead. Sunny grinned, then waved at her and turned away. It was time to leave the city where he had grown up, both for the first time and once again.